The research station hung like a fragile metal spider against the dark canvas of space, its lights blinking softly against the endless black. Seok Park stood at the observation deck, his hands clasped behind his back, watching the distant alien world rotate slowly beneath the station's protective shields. Humanity had always been the underdog in the vast galactic community. For decades they had been treated like children, too naive, too primitive to be taken seriously by the advanced civilizations that dominated interstellar politics. The Central Planetary Alliance saw humans as little more than a curiosity, a species barely capable of understanding their own basic space technology. But Seok knew something was about to change. His latest project, an adaptive interface system, represented something revolutionary. Unlike traditional technological approaches that required complete redesign, this system could integrate, learn, and modify existing alien technologies in real time. It was like a universal translator, but for complex technological systems. Yuna. Kim, his primary research partner, walked into the observation room. Her tablet displayed a complex network of quantum circuits and adaptive algorithms. "The initial tests are promising," she said, her voice calm and professional. "We've managed to increase the integration efficiency by 37% compared to our previous prototypes." Seok nodded, his eyes still fixed on the alien landscape below. The planet was a mixture of deep purple rocky terrain and strange crystalline formations that reflected multiple colors under its twin suns. Alien research teams had considered this world impossible to colonize, but Seok saw potential where others saw barriers. The station itself was a testament to human determination. Constructed from recycled alien technology and human innovation, it represented everything about their species: adaptable, resourceful, and relentlessly optimistic. Unlike other galactic civilizations that relied on centuries-old technological frameworks, humans were willing to break rules and challenge existing systems. A communication alert blinked on the nearby screen. Representatives from the Central Planetary Alliance were scheduled to review their research in less than 2 hours. These meetings were always tense. Bureaucratic alien scientists would pick apart their work, looking for flaws and weaknesses. "They'll try to discredit us again," Yuna murmured, understanding the unspoken tension in the room. Seok smiled slightly. "Let them try." The adaptive interface wasn't just a technological breakthrough, it was a potential key to solving complex, interstellar challenges. Imagine being able to communicate with technologies that were previously considered incompatible, or repairing systems that had been abandoned for centuries. Their current prototype could translate technological languages across different species systems. Where alien civilizations saw barriers, humans saw opportunities for connection and understanding. Outside the station, a massive alien research vessel drifted past. Its design was elegant, all smooth curves and advanced materials that seemed to shimmer and change color. Compared to human technology, it looked like a work of art. But Seok knew that beneath its beautiful exterior, the ship was rigid, inflexible, bound by centuries of established technological traditions. Human technology, by contrast, was messy, improvised, but incredibly adaptable. Yuna began preparing the presentation materials. Holographic displays flickered to life, showing complex algorithms and integration models. Each diagram represented months of research, countless failed experiments, and an unwavering belief that humanity could contribute something unique to the galactic community. The station's artificial gravity hummed softly. Outside, distant stars twinkled, each one a potential home, a potential challenge, a potential opportunity. Humanity might be considered savages by the current galactic powers, but they were savages with vision, with hunger, with an incredible capacity for innovation. Seok touched the observation window. The glass was cool beneath his fingers, a reminder of how thin the barrier was between human potential and the vast, unknown universe. "We're ready," he said to Yuna. She looked up, a rare smile crossing her face. "We are." In that moment, neither of them knew how their small research project would change everything. They couldn't predict the technological revolution that was about to unfold, or how humanity would transform from being viewed as galactic newcomers to becoming its most dynamic and innovative species. But something was definitely about to change, and it would start right here in this small research station, with two humans who refused to accept the limitations others had placed on their species. The universe was about to meet humanity's true potential. The first signs of change came quietly, almost unnoticed. Abandoned alien communication networks suddenly sparked to life. Derelict spacecraft once considered space junk began humming with unexpected energy. Seok Park's adaptive technology was spreading like a subtle wave of technological renewal. In a small orbital repair station near the edge of explored space, a team of human engineers worked on an old Verdian communication array. The alien technology had been dormant for decades, considered beyond repair by its original creators. But Yuna Kim's modifications were transforming the impossible into the possible. "Watch this," she called to her team, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface. The ancient system, which had been nothing more than a collection of dead circuits, suddenly lit up. Streams of data began flowing, clean and precise, where before there had been only silence. Word spread quickly through the scientific community. At first, the response was skepticism. Alien research teams dismissed the human achievements as lucky accidents or temporary solutions. The Central Planetary Alliance viewed these technological adaptations as nothing more than primitive tinkering, but results spoke louder than prejudice. A mining colony on the frozen moon of Kepler 9 became the first major test of human adaptive technology. The colony's life support systems had been failing for years. Previous alien engineering teams had declared the project hopeless. The human team arrived with their modified interfaces and a determination that bordered on stubborn brilliance. Within weeks, the colony's systems were not just repaired but significantly improved. Energy efficiency increased by 200%. Communication networks became more robust and responsive. What had been a dying outpost suddenly became a model of technological innovation. The galaxy began to take notice. Seok watched the developments from the research station, understanding that each small victory was part of a larger transformation. Humans were doing something unique. They weren't just copying alien technology, they were reimagining it. During a routine diplomatic meeting, a Verdian council member confronted Seok directly. The alien's translucent skin shifted colors with its emotional state. Right now it was a mix of deep blue and angry red. "Your species is disrupting established technological frameworks," the Verdian official warned. Seok simply smiled. "We're solving problems that have been ignored for generations." The turning point came during a minor territorial dispute in the Orion cluster. A conflict that would have typically resulted in prolonged military engagement was instead resolved through human-developed communication technologies. The adaptive systems allowed for unprecedented levels of translation and understanding. Yuna's team continued pushing boundaries. They developed interfaces that could communicate with technologies from completely different evolutionary paths. An abandoned quantum communication array from a long-extinct civilization became operational, revealing historical data that had been lost for centuries. The human approach was fundamentally different from other galactic civilizations. Where others saw barriers, humans saw puzzles to be solved. Where others maintained rigid technological traditions, humans improvised and adapted. Alien research stations began requesting human consultants. Technology exchange programs that had previously been mere formalities now became genuine collaborative efforts. The humans weren't just participants in the galactic community, they were becoming essential contributors. Military strategists were the first to recognize the true potential of human adaptive technology. A damaged battleship that would have been scrapped could now be rapidly reconfigured and returned to service. Communication systems that were previously incompatible could now share information seamlessly. Seok understood that this was more than just a technological revolution. It was a fundamental reimagining of how technological systems could interact and evolve. In research labs and orbital stations across human-controlled space, engineers and scientists worked with a passion that was uniquely human. They weren't bound by centuries of established technological thinking. They saw each challenge as an opportunity, each failure as a step toward a solution. The galaxy was changing, and humanity was at the center of that change. As the first year of their technological insurgence came to a close, Siak and Yuna looked out at the stars. The universe that had once viewed them as primitive was now watching with a mixture of fear, respect, and growing understanding. Something extraordinary was happening, and it was just the beginning. The first shots weren't fired with weapons, but with data streams and technological signals. The Central Planetary Alliance had reached its breaking point. Humanity's rapid technological advancement threatened the established order of galactic power structures. A blockade formed around human-controlled star systems. Massive alien warships positioned themselves, their energy weapons glowing with potential destruction. The message was clear: humanity needed to be contained. Sayok Park watched the developing conflict from the central command station. Beside him, Yuna Kim worked furiously, her fingers racing across adaptive communication interfaces. Their technology was about to be tested in the most extreme conditions possible. The first engagement happened near the Kepler frontier. 3 Alliance battleships moved to intercept a human research vessel. Standard protocols would have suggested immediate surrender. But this was no standard human crew. The research ship's adaptive systems began working instantly. Where other species would have a fixed response to incoming missile threats, this vessel could modify its defensive capabilities in real time. Incoming energy weapons were redirected, shield frequencies constantly shifting. "They're changing faster than our targeting systems can track," a frustrated Alliance commander reported. Yuna's adaptive technology turned defensive capabilities into something more. The human ship wasn't just avoiding destruction, it was learning from each attack. Weapon signatures were analyzed, defensive patterns were memorized, and counter strategies developed within milliseconds. The battle lasted less than 30 minutes. When it ended, the 3 Alliance battleships were disabled, not destroyed but completely neutralized. Their communication systems were integrated, their weapon arrays reprogrammed, their core systems essentially captured without firing a single destructive shot. News spread quickly. What had been a potential all-out war became a series of technological confrontations. Human ships didn't fight like traditional military vessels. They adapted, they learned, they transformed. Siak understood the deeper implications. This wasn't just about military technology. It was about a fundamental difference in thinking. Alien civilizations had sophisticated but rigid technological systems. Humans approached technology like a living, breathing entity, something that could be coached, trained, transformed. Military strategists from various alien species began studying human engagement patterns. What they discovered both impressed and terrified them. Human ships could modify their entire operational framework during active combat. A weapon that worked against them in one moment would be completely ineffective in the next. The war wasn't about destruction. It was about adaptation. Yuna developed new interface protocols that allowed human ships to communicate with and temporarily control alien technological systems. A weapon fired at a human vessel could be redirected back to its source. A communication jamming signal could be transformed into a communication enhancement tool. The Central Planetary Alliance found itself fighting an enemy that didn't follow any known rules of engagement. Traditional military doctrines became obsolete. What worked in previous conflicts was useless against human adaptive technologies. Smaller human colonies, which would have been easily conquered in previous eras, became fortresses of technological innovation. Each attack made them stronger. Each confrontation increased their understanding of alien technologies. Siak watched as human technology evolved at an unprecedented rate. What would have taken other civilizations centuries was happening in months. The adaptive systems were learning, growing, transforming with each interaction. Political discussions began to replace military confrontations. Alien diplomats found themselves negotiating with a species that could technologically outmaneuver them at every turn. Humanity wasn't just defending itself, It was demonstrating a new model of technological interaction. The war wasn't about winning through destruction. It was about proving a fundamental truth. Adaptation is the most powerful survival strategy. As the conflict entered its 6th month, something remarkable happened. The very civilizations trying to contain humanity began requesting technological collaborations. The adaptive systems developed by human engineers were too valuable to be treated as a threat. Siak and Yuna watched the changing galactic landscape. They had started this journey in a small research station, with nothing more than an idea and a belief in human potential. Now they were witnessing a transformation that would reshape galactic civilization. The adaptive war was changing everything, and humanity was just getting started. The dust of conflict had barely settled when humanity's true mission began. It wasn't about conquest or dominance, but healing. Siak Park stood on the bridge of a massive reconstruction vessel, watching, as adaptive technologies prepared to transform a war-torn planetary system. Decades of conflict had left entire star systems broken. Planets with ecosystems destroyed, communication networks shattered, entire civilizations hanging by a thread. Where other species saw impossible challenges, humans saw opportunities for renewal. Yuna Kim's adaptive systems did something revolutionary. They didn't just repair, they reimagined. A damaged communication network wasn't simply restored to its previous state. It was transformed into something more efficient, more connected, more alive. The first major reconstruction project focused on the Orion cluster. 3 planetary systems had been devastated by centuries of continuous warfare. Previous attempts at restoration had failed. The human team approached the challenge differently. Quantum ecological stabilizers began their work. These weren't traditional terraforming tools, but adaptive systems that could read a planet's core environmental data and generate precisely what each ecosystem needed. Damaged soil received targeted molecular restructuring. Broken atmospheric systems were gently guided back to balance. What would have taken other civilizations centuries happened in months. Research teams from multiple alien species watched in amazement. The human approach was fundamentally different. Where traditional restoration focused on returning something to its original state, humans created something entirely new. Each damaged ecosystem became an opportunity for innovation. On a planet that had been nothing more than radioactive wasteland, green shoots began to emerge. Communication networks that had been silent for generations suddenly hummed with life. Abandoned cities received adaptive reconstructive technologies that transformed them into living, breathing environments. Diplomatic missions became as important as technological teams. Siak understood that reconstruction wasn't just about fixing physical systems. It was about healing relationships, about creating understanding between species that had been enemies for generations. The adaptive technologies developed during the conflict now became tools of peace. Communication interfaces that had been used for defensive strategies were now helping different species understand each other at deeper levels. Translation wasn't just about converting words, it was about converting entire cultural perspectives. Alien civilizations that had been locked in generations-long conflicts found themselves sitting at the same negotiation tables. The human approach was neither about taking sides nor about forcing solutions. It was about finding paths of mutual understanding. Breakthrough came in the Sigma Quadrant. 3 different species had been fighting over limited resource territories for over 500 years. Human mediators arrived with adaptive resource management technologies that could demonstrate how cooperation was more beneficial than conflict. Yuna's team developed ecological sharing protocols that allowed multiple species to benefit from the same planetary resources. Where previous approaches had been about division, these new systems were about collaborative survival. The galactic perspective began to shift. Humanity was no longer seen as a potential threat, but as a necessary partner in evolution. Their technologies weren't about domination, but about collective progress. Research stations that had been isolated for generations began sharing information. Technological barriers that had seemed impossible to cross were suddenly becoming bridges of understanding. Each adaptive system was like a diplomatic translator, helping different technological and biological systems communicate. Siok watched as planets that had been considered dead zones began to flourish. Ecological systems were rebuilt, not as they were, but as they could be. Each reconstruction was an opportunity for something better, something more connected. The human approach was simple yet profound. They didn't see challenges as problems to be solved, but as opportunities to be explored. Every damaged system, every broken network, every conflicted relationship was a chance to create something new. Political leaders from multiple civilizations began requesting human consultants. The adaptive technologies were becoming more than just technical solutions. They were becoming models of collaborative survival. As the reconstruction efforts continued, something remarkable happened. Species that had been enemies for generations began to see each other differently. The adaptive technologies weren't just fixing physical systems, they were healing historical wounds. Yuna looked at Siok, a rare smile crossing her face. They had started this journey in a small research station, with nothing more than an idea and a belief in human potential. Now they were watching that potential transform an entire galactic civilization. The reconstruction was about more than fixing what was broken. It was about showing what was possible when different species chose understanding over conflict. 20 years had passed since the first adaptive technologies changed everything. The research station where Siok Park and Yuna Kim had begun their journey now looked like a historical monument, a reminder of how everything started. Siok walked slowly, his hair now streaked with gray, through the Galactic Council chambers. Where humans were once treated as outsiders, they now sat at the center of interstellar decision-making. The transformation was complete, but the journey had been anything but simple. The central holographic display showed a galactic map unlike anything seen before. Planetary systems that had been isolated for centuries were now interconnected. Communication networks spanned entire star clusters, powered by human-developed adaptive technologies. Yuna, now the primary scientific advisor to the Galactic Reconstruction Committee, presented their latest breakthrough. Her presentation wasn't about technological superiority, but about collaborative potential. Each slide showed how different species could work together, using technologies that could adapt and grow. The gathered representatives, beings from hundreds of different planetary systems, listened with a respect that would have been unimaginable just decades earlier. Humans had proven themselves not as conquerors, but as problem solvers. A Verdian elder spoke first. His translucent skin shifted colors as he talked, a sign of deep emotional resonance. Humanity did what no other civilization could, he said. You showed us that technology is not about control, but about connection. The adaptive systems had become more than just technical solutions. They were living bridges between different species, different ways of thinking. Where previous galactic civilizations saw barriers, humans saw opportunities for understanding. Ecological reconstruction projects had transformed entire star systems. Planets that were once considered dead zones now flourished. Communication. Networks allowed species to share knowledge in ways never before possible. Siok remembered the early days, the skepticism, the conflicts, the constant battles against established thinking. Now those struggles seemed like distant memories. Humanity had done something truly remarkable. The technologies they had developed weren't just about fixing things. They were about creating possibilities. Each adaptive system was like a living organism, capable of learning, growing, transforming. It was a perfect reflection of human potential. Yuna's latest project demonstrated this perfectly. A communication network that could not just translate languages, but understand cultural contexts. Entire historical misunderstandings between species were being resolved through technologies that could truly listen and adapt. The Galactic Council chambers represented more than a political space. They were a testament to what could happen when different species chose understanding over conflict. Humans had become the bridge builders, the problem solvers, the species that could see potential where others saw only challenges. Political boundaries that had existed for thousands of years were being reimagined. Resource conflicts that had lasted generations were being resolved through collaborative technologies. The human approach wasn't about winning, but about finding solutions that worked for everyone. Suk looked at Yuna. They had started this journey with nothing more than an idea and a belief in human potential. Now they were watching that potential transform an entire galactic civilization. The younger generations of humans were even more remarkable. They had grown up in a universe where adaptation was the primary survival strategy. They saw technology, not as a tool, but as a living, breathing entity capable of growth and transformation. A young human diplomat stood to present a new collaborative research initiative. Her presentation demonstrated a level of understanding that would have been impossible just decades earlier. She spoke about technological solutions that could help multiple species simultaneously, showing a perspective that was uniquely human. The Galactic Council chambers fell silent. This was more than a presentation. It was a demonstration of how far humanity had come. From being considered technological infants to becoming the primary architects of galactic collaboration, humanity had transformed everything. Their adaptive technologies had done more than solve technical challenges. They had changed how different species understood each other. As the meeting concluded, Seok and Yuna exchanged a knowing look. They had witnessed a transformation that few could have imagined. Humanity had risen from being considered savages to becoming the saviors of a broken galactic ecosystem.